So we'll do the curtains first. The first step is to add a plane. Tab into edit mode, rotate it 90 degrees, get it into the right spot. Roughly here or so. Scale it down to what would be like the normal size for it when it's like closed. Be a bit bigger than that. Something like that. Now, you should look at reference, and we'll see that most have a length where it goes to right about at the floor level, just slightly above it. Some of them will go a little bit on the bottom and have it kind of flare out. And other ones will just go to the bottom of the window. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this one go to about where the floor is. Now the basic technique that you use with the curtains is going to be out of your loops vertically and horizontally. Get the top loop, assign it to a new group, which you can use to pin it down in your cloth modifier. Add some cloth. Select the pin group and then press play. Now sometimes if you add cloth and you don't have like a pin group, you might have it like all the way at the bottom, and that's just because you're not at the first frame. So start from the first frame if it just disappears on you all of a sudden. So if you press play, it's just kind of hanging there. What you want to do is you want to add some shape keys. So you need a basis one and then a second one, which will actually be the different shape. And then you can just scale it down a bit and then like move it over here or something. Now only the part that is pinned will actually matter where it is. The rest will be kind of ignored by the cloth modifier. So you just want to add a keyframe at 0 and a keyframe at maybe about 20 or so. That is 1. So press play and your cloth will simulate. And then you can like shade smooth and make it nicer. I didn't really add enough subdivisions, it looks like, so I might go and subdivide one more time. And that's nice. Now you may need to add some collision to some parts like the window frame. So I can just go and add a collision. And since I don't really care about the bevels in the collision, since it doesn't make that much of a big difference, I'll just drag that on top so that it doesn't add any more performance issues. So the collision is before the bevel. Probably doesn't make much of a difference though. And you can then apply the modifier, except for you can't apply it when you have a shape key. So you have a few options here. One is you can apply as shape key and then just get rid of these. And then tab into edit mode and then fix the normals, which seems to be a glitch right now. Make sure that you do the basis first, going from top to bottom. Otherwise, you'll end up with the basis one. Another technique is instead of applying the cloth first, you can just get rid of your shape keys and then apply the cloth the normal way. Now, especially if you ended up with a lower resolution one of this, it might not really be all that straight going down. So I found that it's probably the easiest way to fix that is just to do this manually with some proportional editing. Otherwise, all of the settings will also change the rest of the result. So just move it with some proportional editing. I found that sharp usually works a bit better. Again, good results. So you might want to kind of just do the top part first without proportional editing, since that's kind of a lot. And then turn on it and scale it up. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then again, turn that off and move that. And you get something pretty good. So different currents have different styles. This style doesn't really exist, I don't think, or maybe it's not common. It might be like a very thin string would kind of look kind of like that. But most of them have some sort of like pattern or design at the top. Like you got these ones that are hanging on rings that are pinched. You got these ones where it kind of just goes in a wave on the rings. These ones where the ring is built into the cloth and the pole goes through the cloth. These ones where the ring is made out of the cloth. So there's a lot of different styles that you can do. So next we'll do the one where the ring is built into the cloth. And we can see here's some reference on it. So as before, add a new plane, rotate it on the X 90 degrees, drag it into its general position. Now I'm going to use an array modifier to add each part, so I'm going to make this nice and thin. I'll add 3 loops. I'll drag one of the faces out, like so. Maybe now I'll add the array modifier. Now if you look at this reference, you'll see that most of them have about 4 sections with 8 rings total. Some have 5 or even 6, but I found that most of them have 4, maybe 5. So we'll add a count of 4. Next we'll add another ring here with Control R to even it out. And then we'll use Control R and scroll up to add more rings up here. Make it semi-even. I usually don't go with as much going this way, as it's not really as needed for the shape, although having it not even isn't as great for the cloth simulation, so I get close. I can just select these sections with Shift, and then Control Shift, Shift, Control Shift. And then just press I to inset. And then if you have loop tools enabled, which you just go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and search for loop. And then just press this little checkbox. You can right click, and at the top there's loop tools. You can choose circle. Now you may not get the right size right away, so you can just press I to inset and adjust it. So I would go with the first circle, try and make it a bit bigger. So maybe that's what you'll go with. You can just use Alt Select, then Shift Alt Select to select both of these outer rings, and then hit Control X to dissolve them. Then I'll go into 1 to go into vertex, select these 2 middle vertexes, press X, and delete vertices. And then you have your holes. I'm going to make sure merge is on, and then I will apply it. I will go into one of the side views, and then I'll just go into wireframe so I can select behind, and I'll just drag and box select this top. Or if you got like one of these selected, you can't drag and box select, so you can press Control B and select it. So you get the top selected, and then you press Control G, assign to new group, then you can use that as your pinning group. I'm going to delete this outer loop right here, since that was kind of an artifact from the array modifier. Now this isn't really very high poly, so I can add a subdivision surface. Just one level is fine. Now the more levels you have, the more wrinkly your cloth simulations will be by default. But also there'll be more performance heavy, so going way above to get the most accurate simulation will not be the most ideal because you might get something very wrinkly. So we'll just go with 1 for now. So you see that your corners are smooth too, which you don't really want, so you can change this to keep corners on boundary smooth, and that'll get the bottom. But since you got kind of a loop going here at the top, it doesn't really work the same. So you can just hit Shift E on these two edges and sharpen them. And then you can just apply this modifier. Now you can just get rid of your edge crease by going to Item and edge crease 0. Now as you can see, your circle has a bit of a corner to it, which might not really matter in the long run since you'll have a ring there and it might not really be visible, but we can just select those two and press circle in loop tools again and fix that up. And I don't really care about this one. Now you can again add a shape key or 2 shape keys, and in the bottom one you can just kind of select everything, scale it down on the x-axis a little bit, maybe a little more. And then I might just like go into proportional editing. I'll go with smooth and just kind of drag these out a bit. I think I should select the entire ring. And I can scroll up and down to affect how it is. You'll see that there's a circle that says the radius. And I'll just kind of make it not so even. And perfect. I'm going to drag this over here to about where it is in the rings. Now add my cloth. As you see, it fell down, so just drag it back to 0. Go to the first frame, add a keyframe at 0, and then go to about the 20th frame or so and add a keyframe at 1. Press play, and you see we forgot to add our pin group, and add our pin group. And now it works. Now on these you can use these preset options such as denim to affect how it works. Denim will be a bit stiffer, or maybe you can go with silk, which will give more wrinkles and bend more because it's a more thin fabric. Maybe I'll go with denim for this one. Now also, again, how high res the mesh is too will affect it. So these aren't really perfect, but they are presets you could use for like the thickness and how bendable the cloth is. Now there's maybe some distortion going on here, so you can use a corrective smooth or smooth corrective, and that can smooth out stuff that is deformed during like an animation or a simulation like cloth. It doesn't work without like a cloth or like an armature or other deforming modifiers. So you can get rid of these two. Now if you apply this, the corrective smooth again doesn't work. So you're going to have to select it, press Ctrl A, visual geometry to mesh instead. That'll just take whatever you see and turn it into a mesh instead. So it's like applying both modifiers at once. And now you got your mesh. Now I forgot to set the height of this, so I might just use proportional editing and drag this up to maybe there, or maybe drag it down. We'll have this one be a short one, I guess. And again, adding like a subdiv might increase it a little bit, make it a little nicer. Didn't really have that much of an effect on this. And one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to add the UVs before I started the cloth simulation. You should probably do that, as if I unwrap, it's not really perfect. It's not too bad on this, but you're not really going to be able to do a very good job at evening this out. So you might have some distortion on your texture. Now you can just like add a torus. Doesn't really need so many rings, so I can might go with like 16 or maybe 12 and go with like 6 or something. Scale it down, right click shade smooth in object mode, and then like rotate Y90, maybe Alt S to make it a little thinner. Then I'll scale on the X to make it thinner that way. Scale it down, rotate it, and then just carefully position each of these. Maybe I'll fatten it up again. And then I have a metal material that I can just apply to these. And then we'll do the cloth material later. Next, I'll do one of these styles where they're hanging on the rings. They're all kind of done in a similar way, so I'll just do this duo pleat to show you how I'd approach it, and then you can figure out the other ones yourself. I'm going to do these ones quick though. First, prepare your plane. We want a long, skinny one. We're going to use an array modifier again, which is why it's skinny. So we need a certain amount of loops. So we need 1 here, 2 here, a 3rd one there, 4th one here, 5th one there. So you're going to need at least 5, and then you're going to want to have maybe 2 more in the middle here. So we'll add 7 loops. 7 loops. Now we'll add an array modifier. I'm going to go with about 12. And then, as you can see, that's way too long. So I'm going to just select everything and scale it down until it produces something that seems reasonable for the width of a closed curtain. A little smaller, probably about that. Next, I can hit Control R and add my center loops. I can hit Control R and add the horizontal loops. I'm going to Shift D to duplicate this. Now I'm going to have merge on both of these, but since it's going to be close, I'm going to have 0.001 on both as my distance to make sure I don't merge too many. Now I'm going to go and create my shape here. So I'll start by grabbing these and pulling them out. And then I'm going to scale them in. And as you can see, they kind of pinching more at the top and bottom. So I'll scale these in right here. Might be good to check how it looks with a subdivision. And then they are pinched here again at the back. So I'll select these and drag them in. Now I forgot to add these to a group, so I should go ahead and add the center 5 vertices here. into a new group for my pinning. So now we got our basic shape here, and then we can just select everything, go into wireframe, circle, select, and then hold middle mouse button when you do this, and you can just kind of paint out the center there. And then you can just kind of scale these in on the x-axis. Now, again, it doesn't really matter what it is here that's not pinned, so it doesn't have to be even or anything. We're just trying to move these into our position that we would have them in. Now you can apply the modifiers here. And hopefully, if everything is correct, they both need the same amount of vertices. So I'll tab in, and I have 5,820. You can have a different amount. Doesn't really matter as long as they're the same on both of these two. And then all the vertices have to be in the same order. So even if you have the same amount, it's possible if you did something weird with the modifiers that they'd be in a different order and get all jumbled up. You're going to add your basis shape key, and then you're going to select this, and then select the one with the basis, then join as shapes, and then if you scale it up, hopefully it should be correct. And then you can just kind of get rid of this. Maybe I'll drag that off there just in case. Oh, I don't need it. I'll just delete it. Now, I might go ahead and just kind of select these outer rings, hit E, and scale on the x-axis a little bit to add some at the edge, because as you see, there's a ring at the edge here where it goes out that doesn't have the pinch. And I'll just select these two and hit Control G and assign to the active group, which is the only one we have. If you can remember, before simulating, select everything, press U, unwrap, so you can have a nice even unwrapping, which you can't get once you've simulated it and applied everything. Add your cloth. Again, if it's fallen, just go back to the first keyframe. Go to your pin group. Add it in. And then press I at 1 with 0% and then go to 100%. So if you press play, hopefully everything works out and you'll get it. Now, since it's so high res and they're kind of pinched together, you're seeing that we're getting some collision issues. So I will go back to my cloth modifier and under collisions, self collisions, I'll set the distance to about 0.003 as it's a little high otherwise. Now I'll try again. And after you get to a keyframe that looks kind of even, I'll shade smooth it. Hit Control 2 and add a subdiv. See how it looks. Now it looks like maybe I ended up getting these parts a little too pinched, but it'll be good enough for now. Then I can go ahead and get rid of those shape keys. Maybe I could get a Corrective Smooth modifier or smooth corrective, drag it above the subdiv, and see if a little bit of smoothing might help with that pinching, because the shape key is part of the deform. Maybe just a little bit. I'll go with the advanced options and turn keep corners on to get the sharp corners. And then I can just hit Control A visual geometry to mesh again because you have to apply all of them at once because of the Corrective Smooth. And then you can just add your rings. So again, add a torus, scale it down, and just get into a nice position. Now just add your array, hit shade smooth. Probably want a constant offset of like 0.01, maybe 0 here, maybe like 4. What? Why? Oh, I think I have it rotated. That's why. Yeah. And then just set it to 12 because you got 12 of these, and just kind of slowly adjust it into place. Maybe like 4, 3, something like that. I'll just kind of scale it a little bit to get it right. I'll apply that modifier, and then I'll select these and get my outer one. I think I have them a little too fat, so I'll use Alt S to shrink them down a little. And then I can set the material to metal again. And it's not perfect, but that gives you the basic idea of how to approach this one. So the next style we'll do is the rod pocket style. It has the curtain wrap around at the end and sewed together to create a pocket that the rod goes through. Now, I haven't found an easy way to go about creating the pocket other than just simply using displacement. So I'm going to create a cylinder, go with about 12 vertices, and I'll get rid of the cap, or you could just delete it in edit mode. Rotate along the y-axis in this case, 90 degrees. And then just scale it down to fit around the rod. Scale it down about like that. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, now it's fit around the rod, so we can select the bottom edge, use proportional editing, and again the sharp one works good for this, and then just drag it down to make it look like it's hanging a little bit. Then you can select the whole thing. It's a good idea to turn off proportional editing before you forget about it. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then just scale this up to where it feels about right and move it into place. Select one of these edges, and for now you're going to want to have it ripped apart, so press V, which should rip it apart. And then it should be able to select and move them separately, and then just extrude one of them down. If you ever have a situation where you like extrude something in place or rip it apart and it seems to not have happened because you select one of them and it moves everything, you probably have proportional editing still on. So now hit Control R, add some loops going this way. You're going to want to add plenty because we're going to have all of this detail up here. Then we'll add even another subdivision at the end. And then add some going this way. At this point, it's a good idea to select everything and press U, unwrap, to make sure you can get your clean unwrap before simulating. I might make these a little bit longer actually. Guess I'll use proportional. Guess something kind of even. Unwrap it again, I guess. Now select everything and press M, merge by distance, to merge everything here again because we need that for the simulation and displacement. We can go ahead and select in vertex mode, box select the top section here. There's not really a whole lot of displacement going on here, so we don't really need that in our displacement. So we'll just hit Ctrl G and assign to a new group, which we'll call displacement. And then as usual, we'll select the entire top, hit Ctrl G, assign to new group, which we'll call pen. Tabbing to object mode and hit shade smooth. Let's add a level of subdivision. We got the round corners at the bottom, which I don't really want. So we can change boundary smooth to keep corners. Let's apply this, I guess, and add our displacement. We'll set the vertex group to only our displacement. And then we can hit new and choose a texture. We'll use a clouds texture. And then go back to our modifier and adjust the strength because it's way too high. Maybe 0.05 or maybe a little bit less even. And we can go back to our texture and make it a little bit smaller. But if you go too far, you're going to have like all this noisy detail going in both axes, so you're going to want it to be bigger than that. Maybe something like this, and then what we can do is we can just kind of scale it down a bunch of times. And then tab back into edit mode, select everything and scale it back to normal. And we'll try that again, maybe. And then select everything again, scale on the X. Something like that, maybe. As you can see, we're going inside our rod, so let's try messing with this mid-level a little bit. Now we don't have anything. Make it a little closer maybe, if you can. Okay. Maybe we'll drop this strength a little. Whoops. 0.04. See if we can increase this again. Just play with that a little bit, see if you can get something you like. Let's try scaling it down again. Scaling it all up. Alright, we'll say this is good. So we can go ahead and apply this displacement as a shape key. And now we might as well just apply our scale to make it normal again. By pressing Ctrl A, apply scale. And if we play with the displacement shape key, we can see it again. We can go and select the displacement shape key and tab into edit mode. And then we'll scale this down a bit and move it over like usual. Maybe we could have gone with even less displacement. That seems a little high, but you get the point. Maybe I'll scale it a little bit and drag it back. Alright, let's go ahead and add our keyframes now. Go to 0. Keyframe displacement at 0. Go to about 20 or so. And drag it up to 1 and keyframe it. You can add your cloth modifier. Go to the settings. Pin group. Pin. Press play. First, you might get some intersection problems, so you're going to want to turn on self-collisions. And maybe go to like 0.003, as Blender's default is really quite big actually. So let's try that again. Well, now we're not getting the intersection problems, but I think maybe it looks a bit too wrinkly as if we go to our cloth. Here you can see you only get kind of a few waves going along. And that's because it's so high resolution. What we can do is we can adjust the vertex max and even maybe go to like a denim material, which will still be way too much. I can say that since this is probably about 4 times the vertices because it was subdivided, let's make the mass 1/4. That should make it have a more similar shape to what you would get from a lower resolution simulation. And after you're done simulating, it should look pretty nice, hopefully. That looks fairly similar to what we got in here, where it's kind of more detailed at the top and less detailed at the bottom. So we can go and get rid of our shape keys and then just apply our cloth. And we got the thing again where the top is kind of going in. So let's try to fix that with some proportional editing. We can just alt select these loops since we have this pole here basically. So we can just select these loops with alt select. Turn on proportional editing. Again, sharp usually works better for this type of thing. And then just drag it out. Use the scroll wheel to adjust the size. Maybe something like that. And do it on this side. Then you're going to have to do it on a much smaller scale. Something like that. Something like that maybe. And now we have our rod pocket design. Next, curtains are often pulled back like this, so let's try to do that. We'll use the kind of default curtain we made in the beginning because it's nice and low resolution, so we can do this quickly. We'll drag it into place. We'll make it nice and far back. We'll turn off the subdivision for now and add a cloth. And we'll want the subdivision at the bottom again. We can go back to the 0 frame. And then turn on pin group. And if we press play, it's just hanging there. We'll need self collisions. So we'll set this to 0.003 like before. We'll go back to 0 frame. And as I'm going to try to do this interactively, we're going to need some time to work with this. So we're going to make our cache end frame as 1500 or something to give us plenty of time to work with this. As otherwise, we'll run out of time when this end frame is reached. Now we'll need something to drag this across. So if we add collision to our little hook thing we got here, you're going to see that it doesn't really work. And that's because the shape is just too small and simulated physics doesn't really work all that well with small collision shapes. So we're going to remove that collision. And temporarily we'll just add a kind of a big thing to use in its place. So we'll add a cube, tab into edit mode and scale it down on the Z. I might even scale it up going this way, as we're going to be scaling this down and it's going to get smaller and smaller. So we're still going to have problems if we don't make it really extra big. Now I'm just going to add our little collision area here and move it into place. Try to get about centered. And then we can just like right click, bridge faces, and then it should bring these together. Now we can add maybe a bit of a bevel modifier with like 2 segments, just to make sure that it's not a sharp edge. And then we can add our collision shape. I'll maybe drag this down and shrink that a bit. So now if we press play, we should be able to scale this down. You're going to want to go slowly, because if you go like really fast, you're going to start messing things up. So just press play and go nice and slowly. Maybe scale it down a little. Let's drag it over. Nice and slowly. Try not to mess things up. And you could also try animating this, but I'm lazy, so I'm just going to try to do this the interactive way. Then maybe I'll scale it down a little on the y-axis. Try to squish this together a little bit. And maybe I'll like rotate on the y-axis, and that kind of gives it some slack and makes it curve a little bit. Let's see, I'll press pause and then see if I can see this a little bit better. Maybe I'll hit play and try to drag it over a little bit on the y-axis. Scooch it into the shape. And maybe drag it back a little bit. And then I can pause it again. And I'll get rid of this collision shape since I don't think I need it anymore. I can probably delete it even. And then we can turn the subdivision back on. And then maybe we can add a bit of the corrective smooth. Drag it above the subdivision to try to get some of that deformity out. Oops. And then just kind of decrease the amount. And then we can apply our modifiers. As you can't apply the corrective smooth the normal way, you're going to have to hit Control A and Visual Geometry to mesh. And then maybe we can sharpen this part up with just some proportional editing. So have that on and then scale down one of these faces. You probably don't need that much. Something like that. And you get a sharper point, and then you can maybe just tweak like the position of this to match. And then there you go. So that's how you would approach something like this. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and make sure to check out the playlist in the description to see the rest of the videos in this series.